Welcome to the Data Literacy Show, the podcast that helps organizations build, measure, and level up their data and AI literacy. I'm Alli Torban, the Senior Data Literacy Advocate here at Data Literacy.
And I'm Ben Jones. Hi, everyone. Co-founder and CEO of Data Literacy, where we're all about helping people and organizations learn the language of data and AI through tailored assessments, training programs. And on today's show, this is our 10th episode. Am I right, Alli?
10,
okay,
magic
10 for 10,
yay.
10 months out of the year, 10 for 10, October, here we are. And so what are we doing today? Okay, I want to talk about something that a lot of organizations are thinking about, and they're working on them probably right now. Maybe some of them are going ahead without working on them, which might be a problem, but it's your AI strategy. What is your AI strategy? If you're a leader in an organization, how are you approaching putting together an overall roadmap and a plan for your team to actually leverage AI in a useful way instead of a harmful way?
Yeah, and everything is moving so fast. And I can imagine as a leader of an organization, it's hard to keep up and also look to the future. It's almost like, aren't we in the future right now at every single moment?
Oh my gosh, every day.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
hard. So, in this episode, we're going to share some AI strategy basics to help you
Yeah.
build your own organizational strategy. So, let's start with the basics, Ben. At a high
Yeah.
level, what even is an AI strategy?
Yeah. I mean, it's simply a plan for your organization and how they're going to use AI to actually achieve your goals.
hmm
So it's pretty simple.
And I'm imagining there's probably some key pillars to an AI strategy.
Yeah, I like that idea of pillars you mentioned there, and this is in a lot of consulting organizations, slide decks, but think about a building. The classic one is like the Parthenon, right? In Greece, what do you have? Kind of this stone structure with pillars. And then you have a foundation and you've got a top to it. So let's think about it along those lines. So we'll cover 7 sort of aspects of this little structure. And you really need to think about all 7 of them. And they come straight out of our AI literacy assessment. I'll talk about that in a little while. But for now, like, what are the 7 factors and how can you think about each one of them? Well, at the beginning, let's start at the very top. I mean, you want to put your organization's overall goal or purpose. I mean, you don't want to really get started thinking about AI strategy until you place at the very top here of this little diagram we're thinking about
hmm
the organization's purpose.
And
Because
purposes kind of goes across the top. It's like almost like an
yeah,
umbrella, the ceiling or the
right.
top of it.
Yeah, like a roof, basically
hmm
like the very, very top thing, maybe goes like a triangle, a pinnacle at the top. The very, very tip of the top is your organization's goals. So
hmm
it could be your purpose and mission. I like to get really into specifics around the goal. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Let's say maybe this year or the next few years. So that's at the very top. But then, from there, you can even still in this roof structure of this crazy building we're thinking about, you can break that out to maybe an AI strategy goal or statement. Maybe you can even think about specific KPIs, like how are we going to measure success around implementation of AI? So that's the cap. And then you've got 4 pillars. So the cap is number 1. That's one of our 7. Then you get 4 pillars. So that gives us 2 through 5. So what are those? Okay, so there's 4 pillars. One is ethics. I mean, you've got to start there. What is that all about? Well, what are you not going to do with AI?
Mm,
Or how are you going to make sure things don't run amok? Because there are a lot of risks here. I mean, it isn't like there are no possible harms that could be done. So I think you need to start by thinking about that and really putting in place not just some kind of like Boy Scout statement or credo or what have you, like actually more specific than that, like who owns what, who's accountable for what, how are you putting in place like governance structures to make sure that you're monitoring things and that there's an awareness of who is responsible for the implementation of the strategy and what are the regulations you've got to follow, what sorts of harms are you trying to prevent when you use AI? So I think that you really want to start there. That's got to be pillar number 1. Maybe it's the largest pillar. It's the one that's holding up the most weight. It's where you
hmm
start.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can imagine that you have maybe certain types of data that in processes, people working with certain types of data that maybe AI shouldn't be touching and that you should be
Yeah.
leaving that to the humans. So maybe be thinking about that. What are we using AI on and what aren't we using AI on for these
Right.
specific reasons?
Yeah, totally. I mean, actually, as you were describing that, Allie, it made me think about the diagram you made for us for this course we're working on right now called Enhancing Your Workflows with AI. That should be coming out real soon. But
Hmm.
you talk about in your diagrams you created for us for that course, there are really, helpful ways to think through, the kinds of situations that might result in really high recovery costs. So what if things go wrong and AI botches some process, and then all of a sudden now there is some significant harm done to some stakeholders, and you have to really spend a lot of time and energy and probably money to kind of clean up the mess.
Hmm.
So I think with the ethics pillar, you're just starting by really specifying, what is it that you're trying to prevent going wrong, and what is the way in which people will be treated respectfully, fairly, and that's why I think it's got to be really a central pillar there, and like I said, kind of the biggest one. So I would start there. I'd really
Hmm.
start there.
Yeah, and bias too, right? That's
Yeah,
something that is can be introduced with AI, which I feel like fits
right.
into the ethics where if you're not really keeping a good handle on what you are and are not going to use AI for, AI bias can be seeping in and like you said, harmful to other people.
Yeah, maybe you've got some kind of AI algorithms that are helping choose customers or giving them certain experiences, but you're using demographic data to train those models, or the models are actually based on some of those kinds of variables that might be sensitive, might
Hmm.
not really be ones that those customers or your stakeholders would want to be used in some key decisions that are made about people and how they're treated. So
Hmm.
those are things you just have to be aware of. I mean, you have to look into that. And this technology is not perfect. It's something that could cause harm. And I think that, it's sort of like with doctors, what do they say? First and foremost, right? Like do no harm, right?
Yeah, the Hippocratic Oath.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So, how are we going to prevent doing harm with AI? Super important. Pillar
Yep.
number one. I would hate to, and I think in our era, organizations of all kinds have rushed ahead to do things without getting that right. And that's resulted in some headlines that you don't want to be a part of.
Oopsie
So
moments.
yeah. And those are going to happen. They're going to happen. I mean, it's hard to get it all right and to think of everything and prevent everything. I mean, that's
Hmm.
not really practical, but at the end of the day, you want to put your head on the pillow and say, I've done a lot of due diligence to try to make sure that we got ahead of any of those oopses, and yeah, try to prevent some of them before they happened. I mean, you can't do it all, but I think you got to try.
Hmm. So that's
So
the
that's a
big,
pillar.
that's a one of the pillars and a very
Yeah,
important pillar. What's the next
right.
one?
Okay, so the technology itself. Now, people become so obsessed with tools. I mean,
Hmm.
if there's a mistake with the technology pillar, it's that's all people think about.
Mm.
They think AI and they just think of which AI tools are we going to use. So, but of course they are relevant. They're really important. Not just the AI tool, but also all of the other infrastructure around it, the systems that your team members use to get the job done. So don't think of it as the only pillar, but yes, you need to think about the tools. Which ones fit into your systems? Which ones are nice and complementary to what you've already been doing? And how can you evolve your technical infrastructure and the systems that your team members get to use to actually leverage AI in ways that is not so filled with friction, not involving such kind of problematic systems that break. And so, what are the set of tools? What are the AI tools you're going to use? This one's dizzying. I mean, because it's just changing so fast. You referred to it earlier, and you've got this evolution happening with the technologies themselves. So, what was in your technology pillar last year? I mean, that might not have anything to do with what you're using today, or it might be very, very different. I certainly know for us in our courses, we have to keep going back to them and updating them because of the fact that the tools are changing. I mean, just literally while you were logging into this call, I'm downloading ChatGPT Atlas, which is their new
Mm.
AI-based browser, right? To learn it, to use it, and I think that those are changes that are just going to keep coming at us. It's not going to slow down. I don't think it will. I certainly don't think it will. So
Hmm.
you have to keep revisiting the technology pillar. But yeah,
Yeah, and I can imagine that you do need to balance how many times you're going back and reassessing technology versus
yeah,
just using what you have and because it's working, like the diminishing returns kind
right,
of
right.
idea.
Yeah, no, great point. I mean, you don't want to rush to implement the very next thing just because
Hmm.
it's out and because now all of a sudden you have to pivot. and immediately implement everything and rip everything apart. So there are times where you'd say, well, we're going to skip this evolution and wait for the next one, or maybe this next little shiny thing isn't really for us, and that's okay too. So no, it's a good point. You really need to stay up to date. That doesn't mean you need to scramble and change everything every little time you see an announcement, because that's happening every week now.
Hmm.
So
Do you think it would be
yeah.
smart for a company when they have an AI strategy to be thinking about, okay, well, here's a certain amount of time, like maybe every quarter,
Hmm.
where we're doing some sort of
Yeah.
audit, technology audit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's good to proactively schedule time to reassess it, but maybe more also reactively, when there's some big announcements,
Mm,
have a little SWAT team that's going, okay, we're taking a look at it. We're going to give a recommendation by the end of the day. Is this relevant? Is there value here for us? Do we want to suggest looking into it further? And or are we going to pass on it,
hmm.
so that at least it's not something that you kind of miss the boat because of something else that was happening that meant there was nobody thinking about it or aware of
Right.
something big. So yeah, I think that there's a proactive, let's look at it quarterly. I think you suggested that. I would stick with that. I think you're
Hmm.
right. Proactively looking at it every month is a little bit maybe much. However, the caveat I would put out there is have a small little team that's more reactively like looking at things as they arise, seeing if they want to hit that the gopher down, or what are they going to do with this latest big announcement. So
Yeah, you want to balance the innovation and efficiency. Like if you're
right.
just like, oh, nope, we're stuck on this schedule of every quarter, so don't bother me with this. But
Yeah.
there's this cusp of
Yeah.
things happening.
Well, and you got to think about the fatigue component too,
Yeah.
because people are going to get burnt out if you just constantly student body left, student body right, and
Yeah.
they're just
New,
going,
new, new,
"What
new.
in the world?" Yeah, I just
Hmm.
can't even. As soon as I learn something, I have to learn. I have to forget it and
It is
start.
that is tough as a worker,
Yeah,
as someone on a team. It's like, oh,
right.
I'm in a groove, man. Like, stop changing
Yeah,
things up on me.
I know. I know. That was working for me. Why am I having to do this again? And
Yeah.
so you want to make sure that when you're making a change to their tools and what's in their toolbox, it's well thought out and for a good reason. That being said, you don't want to burden that rollout with so much detail that it slows you way down and everything grinds to a halt, and then
Hmm.
you're stuck with yesterday's tools
Right.
that are outdated. So yeah, it's a
Okay.
balancing act. I think you said that right, and that's exactly what it is.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So technology pillar.
yeah,
What's the
yeah.
next pillar?
Well, I spent a lot of my time thinking about process, so I put a whole pillar just about process. When I was in Lean Sigma, we would look at continuous improvement. We'd look at understanding errors and waste in processes, even just mapping out the steps. And I think organizations need to do that, right? How do you get things done? What are the key value streams? What are your operating procedures? What are the actual steps that everyday people take in your company to convert inputs into outputs and to create value? And so, what are the operating plans here? And how does AI actually weave into all of that? I think this is the most forgotten pillar in our day and age. It
Hmm.
used to be a big focus, and it still is for some industries. Like I think manufacturing tends to think a lot about process. Certain industries are really keyed in. Um, and I think it's because of the focus on quality, like automotive and things like that, right? They focus a lot on process, but other organizations maybe don't give it as much airtime or the due that it's worth. So I would say, think about your processes, also list them and understand which ones are being enhanced or augmented with AI, which ones are being automated. And that is a very important question because you don't want to automate everything. Some things might not be appropriate. Maybe they're too complex, or they're too much is at stake.
Yeah.
Um, so you do need to automate some of them though, to stay competitive. And so you have to be strategic about which ones you're going to automate versus which ones are you going to just simply augment human decision making, human problem solving. And then
Hmm.
that's a big topic of the course we're just finishing right now. So yeah, there's a whole pillar there around process, I think.
Yeah, and it does seem to be a little bit tied in with ethics, right? So you're thinking about what are the things
Hmm.
that are, like you said, critical and also where you do need the human in the loop. So thinking about, okay, here's our process. Where could AI fit into it ethically and also in a way that's efficient and
Right.
actually is a strength of AI that could be augmenting what humans can do?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's a great point because just because you could make something more efficient doesn't mean you should. Doesn't mean it's
Hmm.
right to. Doesn't mean it would be fair to. Doesn't mean that maybe it will get you in hot water by making something run efficiently, or maybe you can increase efficiency, but there's so many kind of underlying risks that could really go wrong. And so maybe ethically you say, we're not going to touch it because if we try to, maybe it'll work and everything will be great. On the other hand, maybe this is going to blow up in our face, you know.
Hmm.
So there's some thought that needs to be given strategically to what processes you're going to optimize, and which ones you're going to just automate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where can AI be placed into our process the best to help us with our any kind of um gains? Like what kind of gains are you looking for? Which I guess comes from purpose. And then okay, now
Yeah.
where in the process could that fit the best? I think that makes
Yeah,
sense for
exactly. And
this pillar.
with regard to that, if you've ever had a home built or remodeled or what have you, okay, there's a person that's going to show up to work on your house. You definitely want them having nice tools, good tools, but that's not it, right? They need to have some skills. They need to know kind of what steps to follow to do things in the right order. Do I don't know, put the wall in first or the flooring? And I mean, if they do things all out of
Paint and
order
then
and,
drywall.
right, yeah, that's maybe that wouldn't, that's the wrong process. So, you want your contractor and that team to have great tools, but you also want them to have good, sensible processes to follow, to know
Hmm.
what the processes are and to do things in the right order. So
Hmm.
yeah, process
Yeah.
is a pillar. Yep.
Yeah, you want the fancy tools, but also using them correctly.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Okay, process. All right, what's the next
Yeah.
pillar?
Fourth pillar. So this is to me, this is the last pillar. We're going to keep talking about other elements of our little diagram here, but the fourth and of four pillars is people. And this is the one we love here at our company because we're all about the people. We're all about understanding how you can make them more fluent in the language and the concepts and the tools. How can you work with them to adopt them? I mean, this one isn't forgotten necessarily as much as process is forgotten,
Hmm.
the forgotten pillar. People is the one that's taken for granted. People and leaders think, oh, we'll just put the tool out there and they'll use it, right? Why wouldn't they?
Hmm.
Um, well, maybe not, and we've seen that a lot, So you really have to kind of think through how do I make sure they are aware of new tools and processes that we've put in place, that they know what to do and how to do it, so they got the knowledge and skills, but that's not it. It isn't just about their knowledge and skills. I think we stop there too many times. When you're talking about people, it's not just knowledge and skills. They're not robots. Also, what are their attitudes and behaviors? Do they want to use AI? I mean, a lot of them don't. A lot of them are afraid of it. Well, how are we going to make them feel safe? How are you going to work with them to actually change their habits? I mean, maybe they've been doing a job for decades. How do they move from that rut they're in to a different, hopefully not rut, but a different way of doing things
Hmm.
to even adopt these new habits and ways of doing things? You can't just assume that all of that's going to follow. So, training, communities of practice, assessments, coaching, mentoring, apprenticeships, all those things that are so critical. And they're in this AI literacy and adoption. We'll call it the people pillar. And you got to
Hmm.
have that as part of your AI strategy. Otherwise, you're going to implement a bunch of really amazing technologies and no one's going to touch them, or they're going to use them all wrong. So that's what you got
Hmm.
to watch out for.
Yeah, and this one feels like it requires some. We talked a little bit about KPIs kind of when we were
Hmm.
talking about purpose. This kind of sounds like we would need to be thinking about ways to collect data in more of a qualitative way or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
surveys, because when you said how do people feel about this?
Right.
So it's not
Right.
something where you can be like, "Oh yeah, we have 100 users of this technology, we're good." No, you
Right.
have to
Yeah.
maybe have some surveys and talk with people on a regular basis to make sure that they're using it and it's working well and they are happy with this process and it's actually being used in a way that is productive and
Hmm.
efficient and they feel valued and all the things.
Yeah. Employee satisfaction.
Hmm.
What are their perspectives about where the issues are? Um, those are all really important questions and fit into this pillar as well. Absolutely. It isn't just a question of, okay, how many people use the tool? It's really a question of, kind of understanding that entire um, set of factors related to the human beings that are still going to be involved with whatever you do. I mean, it isn't like they're going away. They certainly shouldn't. If that's the perspective you have as a leader, AI is going to replace all my people. I don't think you're going to be in business for long. I think that that's short-sighted.
Hmm.
And I think people are becoming a little bit maybe overzealous about their desire to replace people. And I think we got to be careful about that.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Oh, it also made me think too, if you were constantly talking to your people about how they're using AI, how they feel about it, they can
Mhm.
also help flag when they feel like maybe there's an ethical concern
Yeah.
because you can't,
Yeah.
like you said, like there's a lot of things you can't account for, but if you're constantly
Right.
checking with your people who do have
Hmm.
a kind of an ethical compass, everybody has something inside them.
Yeah.
They can
Right.
catch things that maybe you wouldn't aren't aware of and kind of nip it in the bud before it
Yeah.
becomes a big problem.
I mean, I think as a leader, you have those kind of mantras out there. If you see something, say
Mm,
something, or, bad news travels fast, whatever you want to put out there and then you have to really make sure you follow up. It's not just some fancy slogan, but that
hmm.
when someone sees an issue, whether it's an ethical issue or a quality issue, or maybe the issue is an opportunity that's being missed,
Ah.
they feel they can raise that flag. They can walk right into your office. They can send that email. There's no repercussions. There's no, kind of blowback or backlash. They can really kind of trigger an important discussion that you want your people in your company to be having that discussion. And if you don't make sure they know that they can, then they might not, and then that'll really be bad for you. So
Hmm.
that's all people. That's kind of bleeding a bit into the culture component or factor. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment, and I think that those are two very related
Yeah, this is
aspects.
all one big part of
Yeah.
a Parthenon, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's all one Parthenon, and you talking about people, and
They're
they're
connected.
super connected to the culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we have purpose that's
Yeah.
kind of overarching, and then our
Yeah.
pillars, we have ethics, technology, process, people,
People.
and then
Right.
what happens next with our little
Yeah. So,
Parthenon?
well, it's not going to sit on the dirt. It's going to sit on a foundation. And for me, the foundation is data. I mean, in this case, why? Why is it data? Because it's all kind of based on the data you've got. How good is its quality? What kind of governance measures do you have in place for the data itself? You know, what's happening right now is organizations are implementing AI using techniques like RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, or MCP, model context protocol. And now, what these fancy acronyms mean is that these foundational AI models that have been trained on vast, vast, vast amounts of training data from the whole internet, basically,
Hmm.
um, can reference your organization's documents, repositories, databases, and that's all your organization's data, structured and unstructured. Well, as we've seen, a lot of organizations have really dirty data, or there's huge issues with it, or it isn't very accessible or organized. And so garbage in, garbage out, right? It's hard to imagine how the AI models are going to reference bad data and somehow come out with a good response. It's probably
Mm.
not going to happen. So you need that foundation of data quality, the foundation of data governance, and all the pillars we've been talking about, really kind of have to rest on that, I think, with
Hmm.
the specific topic of AI strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, since data and big data that's been around for a good amount of
Yeah,
time, especially compared to AI, you
right.
likely already have some sort of data strategy, data governance type thing in place already. So I bet you could,
Yeah.
if it's separate for some reason in your company, in your organization, getting these people together working on data and AI and making sure that there's some cross pollination of how they approach it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, what you don't want to have is your data people and your AI people that never talk. Like that doesn't work. I don't know of anyone who's doing that. You would certainly not want to do that. I mean, you
Hmm.
really need to mesh them together, like you said. If someone's working on data quality, then the people that are implementing AI tools and methods need to be talking to them and saying, okay, here is the data we're leveraging for a specific kind of chat bot or AI algorithm. Okay, great. How do we know what ways we can continue to improve that data? Is it good enough? How do we know? Let's incorporate some testing. Let's work with them hand in hand. So that's why, to me, data and quality and data governance, those are the foundation for the AI strategy.
Mm.
But to your point, it isn't like in a lot of organizations, that foundation's already been laid a long time ago. It's just got a lot of cracks in it still. So to overuse the analogy, it's the foundation's there, but it's just not so great, right? So
Hmm.
you still need to roll up the sleeves and get to business, making sure your data is ready for these AI tools that your leaders just want you to rush ahead and implement. But again, there's going to be so many stories and headlines of organizations that implement AI into poor data environments,
Mm,
and it's going to really result in some massive snafus. And so I think that will probably cause people to slow down a bit and organizations to realize, like, wait a minute, we've got to be aware that there are some major pitfalls involved here, and we've got to make sure we don't fall into them.
mm.
But right now, they don't know. I don't think that they're as aware as they should be about the
Yeah.
fact that these pitfalls are out there.
Yeah, so don't
Yeah.
feel like because you have some new AI tools and you have an AI strategy, that means you get to ignore any data foundation cracks that you had. Like, oh, don't
Right.
have to worry about this anymore. No, it
Yeah.
might even just be exacerbated now that you are building on
Yeah.
top of it.
Well, because it makes before the problem, maybe in some ways it was a benefit, was that data was kind of hard to use. So if you had a lot of
Ah,
data problems, um, well,
no
there's a
one was
chance
using
no
it.
one no one ever touched it because it was, I don't know, stuck in some database that people didn't even know where to go to find.
Mm,
But now you're shining the spotlight on all of that through the use of these AI tools, making it so easy for literally anyone to interact with these tools. But again, now for the first time, it's like, oh, wait a minute, you're kind of turning the light on now in the closet and realizing that
mhm,
you've got to get some work done there. So you might become aware of that problem through a painful means of actually having it result in a major problem
mm,
with an AI tool.
mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
All right, what's the last part of our to complete our
Oh, yeah.
Parthenon?
Okay. This is a little cheesy, but I like it. It's the air in the whole building is your culture. There's no
The air.
pillar. There's no, yeah, it's the air. It's
I
the
mean, that kind of
air.
makes sense. Yeah, toxic culture, right?
Right. And when you don't want to go into a building smoking, because when there's smoke, there's fire. So
Hmm.
you want it to be nice, clean, clear air. And it's, the culture is everywhere. It's sort of infused within everything. And it's hard to put your finger on it. It's hard to touch it.
Ah, that's
So,
true.
it's sort of ethereal. But culture is so important. And I mean, what's the attitude like? How do people feel? What are the kinds of ways you're rewarding people, recognizing them? What kind of messages are really pertinent and popular about what is this team all about? And so you want to make sure it's nice, healthy culture. And so I think when you're thinking about AI strategy, okay, how does culture matter? Well, people are pretty afraid. We talked about that. So, how are they being reassured? People have some sense of identity of what the team's all about and why they exist and what are their norms and how they go about things and why any of it matters,
Hmm.
why what we're doing is making a difference. And I think those are all aspects of culture to
Ethical
me anyway.
compass too.
Yeah, it's why it's all infused in all of the other pillars as
Yeah.
well, really. So it's that intangible piece of it. And you know when you're in a company that's got a poor culture,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And we've all been there. So I think you have to ask yourself in your AI strategy, what are we doing to make sure our culture is healthy? What are we doing to leverage strengths of our culture to go about implementing AI in a productive and healthy way?
Hmm.
So, I like that aspect of it as well. And, measuring culture if you can and trying to find a way to improve it.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's a
and
leader's job. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It starts from the top, and you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier about how if I see something that is making me nervous, or I'm not sure
Hmm.
about, or I think there's a problem, then I know there's an open door policy. That definitely starts from the top, and
Yeah.
it is one of those things where you can't quite put your finger on, but then when you
No,
start
it's hard.
working in a team, you're like, I'm catching on something here that
Right. Right.
I can't say anything if something is wrong.
Yeah. Is it a fear-based culture?
Hmm.
Is it a rewards-based culture? Is it a culture where everybody needs to work 80 hours a week to feel like they're contributing? Those are different kinds of cultures that we become involved in as we go through our career. And so, yeah, what are the important cultural norms and messages you're putting out there as a leader?
Hmm.
And how does that relate to what's coming down the pike with AI for your whole team?
Hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think are some common mistakes that
Yeah.
organizations make when they're rolling out AI that the
Yeah.
having a defined AI strategy could
Hmm.
help with alleviate?
Yeah, so we touched on a few of them. I'll just summarize them real quick. I mean, for one, I would say tools for tools' sake.
Hmm.
So that's a really common one. People are like, let's just grab the shiny fancy thing and run with it and implement it. But you want to avoid the mistake of failing to connect your AI strategy with those high level business outcomes with your goals. So that's pitfall number one. Pitfall number two, I'll call it ethics schmethics. So this basically means, oh, that's all just a bunch of fuddy-duddy. We don't need to do any of that. That's just Boy Scout stuff. And it's not. It's like super practical and actually like really, really important to think
Hmm.
about ethics and why you are going to go about things in a certain way. And so I think a lot of organizations they're so busy thinking about money and how to make money that this idea of, what they don't realize is that getting ethics wrong, acting unethically is like a huge financial risk. Like,
Yeah, it
so
is. It
yeah, it can
is.
really, I mean, it isn't just that it matters because it matters for the reason that it just does. But then also additionally, practically speaking, like, yeah, if you have a major ethical snafu, like that's going to hit the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to make that mistake. Organizations, tech companies have been making that mistake now for the better part of our lives, and it's going to keep happening, and that's a big mistake. We talked about the one about data quality, the GIGO mistake or pitfall. People just running ahead implementing AI tools, but they didn't fix their data quality. So that's pitfall number four. And then pitfall number five is really where we come in. It's the if we build it, they will come pitfall. So what does it mean? Oh, let's just put this stuff out there and everybody's going to adopt it. We're not going to train them. We're not going to have conversations with them about their concerns or talk to them about what would help them adopt it. We're just going to build it, toss it out there. Even training, people sometimes just implement training and put it in an on-demand library and
Hmm.
here you go. And then they're kind of surprised when nobody ends up taking the course. So I think you got to be a little bit more purposeful about this whole AI revolution and thinking about it from the lens of your team members and what does it look like to them and how do you make all of this work for them. So avoid that pitfall of if we build it, they will come. Those are the four
Hmm.
that come to mind for me that I see a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this and you do feel like, oh, I was planning on just doing on-demand AI
Hmm.
training, what are actually some options? Go back
Yeah.
to our last episode, episode
Right.
9, where we talked about
Right.
a whole bunch of different training modalities and the pros and cons of each. And definitely the con with the on-demand is like it could just sit there and
Sit there. Yeah.
get
Yeah.
dusty and nobody's using it. So,
Right, right. There are
uh,
ways around that. There are ways
yes.
to incentivize people to
Hmm.
dive in and go for it, but it doesn't just happen all by itself.
Yes, you have to
Yeah,
know that's a pitfall and you have to be ready for it and
right.
be taking specific actions to keep that from happening.
Yep. Have a strategy for how your AI literacy training is going to really make a difference. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay, that was really great, really useful. So if you're
cool.
wondering what even an AI strategy is, just think about that our little Parthenon metaphor. You got your purpose up on the top. You
Hmm.
have pillars: ethics, technology, process, people. Data is our foundation. You can't ignore the data, and then
Hmm.
culture is the air you breathe. It's all around us. It's
That's right.
invisible, but
That's right.
super, super important.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, that whole structure, I think, can be one that helps you move forward. And as a leader, you should be going through the list and having conversations with all of your team members
Hmm.
yeah, about every one of them, and which are the ones that are problematic right now, right? Which are the ones where you've got a good handle on it, and then come up with that AI strategy.
Hmm.
We get involved with that, of course, as an organization. We love helping leaders come up with their AI strategy. We love helping organizations measure the baseline for where they are. That's where our AI literacy score team-based assessment comes in. That's where some of our more objective assessments come in, where you can kind of send out little quizzes with right and wrong answers to help get a handle on what are the things that people know and can do. Those are all offerings that we love to get involved with and are right now with a number of clients. So
Hmm.
so yeah, let us know if we can help in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Data Literacy Show. If you found it useful, please share it with someone else that you know is working on an AI strategy in their organization. Hopefully that's helpful to you and them.
Yep, absolutely. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. We're gonna have more episodes coming. We're gonna keep going. Should we call it season 2 when we start on January? Is that
Yeah.
what we call
Yeah.
it?
Maybe
Oh my
2026
gosh.
season 2.
Season 2. All right. Well, and if you have some things you want us to cover or talk about, let us know.
Yeah.
And everything, of course, that we talked about today including, I think you're going to make a nice fancy diagram for this
Yeah,
one, right, Allie?
I'll make a
Okay.
drawing of our little Parthenon.
We love Allie's diagrams. It's in all of our books and courses, and she's so talented. So we love that you do that. And so, yeah, check in our show notes over at dataliteracy.com. Get yourself a nice little free diagram. Email it around the office. Say, hey, what are
Hmm.
we doing here with these different aspects or factors?
Yep.
And we'll go from there. So wonderful. Hey, thanks, Allie, for everything. I really love doing the show with you. And
Yes.
see you next time.
See you next time. Bye,
All
everyone.
right. Bye bye.